this happened on Bank Holiday Monday, and it seemed like it was a very quiet weekend for news until this happened. I actually got a text from somebody involved in organised crime investigating within Garda Síochána and said, keep your eyes peeled, something's happening. And basically I was alerted to a tweet by the Spanish National Police, or Policía Nacional. And it was a guy being led away by two Spanish police officers, and they identified him as a key member of the Kinahan cartel. Now, this man's name is Liam Byrne. He's 42 years of age. He's been named in the High Court by the Criminal Assets Bureau as effectively being heavily involved in both drugs trafficking and in terms of violent crime for the Kinahan cartel. He's effectively Daniel Kinahan's most trusted lieutenant of his operations. He basically, the Byrne crime family, people might know the Byrne family. David Byrne was Liam Byrne's brother. He was killed at the Regency Hotel shooting. Of course, that was one of the big turning points of the Hutch Kinahan gang feud, which we've seen in Dublin over the last number of years. So Liam Byrne is David Byrne's brother. Effectively, he'd been living in the UK for a while as well, now been based out of Dubai until this happened. So he's been arrested. Another Irishman has been arrested. Jack Kavanagh is his name. He's 22. He's Thomas Bomber Kavanagh's son. So he's a guy who has been effectively convicted in the UK as part of the ongoing multinational investigation into trying to bring down the Kinahan crime cartel, which has, of course, bloomed from Ireland into becoming one of the world's biggest transnational OCGs.
The UK role in all of this, because even the Spanish, when they were talking about this apprehension, they said that it was done not at the behest of the UK's National Crime Agency, but that it was effectively on foot of an investigation triggered by them. What's the role of the British authorities in all of this, and then where do the guards fit into the whole jigsaw? Yeah,
so basically, and you might have seen this dating back a couple of years now. Do you remember when the US ambassador Claire Cronin did her big thing in Dublin City Hall?
Yes, yeah.
That was last year, was it? We talked about that on the podcast.
Was it 2021 or 2022?
I think it was during the podcast.
We definitely talked about it on the podcast, because you were definitely covering that for a couple of days.
Feels like even longer ago than that, but it's been a long time coming anyway, this sort of collaboration between the UK National Crime Agency, because a lot of the Kinahans, after what happened in Dublin with the gang war, some of them moved effectively over to the UK, where they had a huge base of operations as well. So there was that cooperation between the US authorities on Garda Síochána and the UK's National Crime Agency, which basically tackles organised crime in the UK sense across, they have multiple police districts, but it's the UK National Crime Agency. So gun running is the main thing that they were looking at here. And this is something which, it's actually fascinating how this all transpired, the arrest that transpired in Mallorca over the weekend transpired. It involves basically, there was a hack of effectively criminals for a number of years were using an online chat platform, effectively a criminal WhatsApp. It's called EncroChat. And it was hacked a few years ago. It's led to a number of convictions and a number of cases busted open by authorities, whether they be in Spain or in the UK. And effectively, that's what led them to basically get enough detail on Liam Byrne and this operation involving the movement of weapons, which were meant to be effectively flown into the United Kingdom. Spanish National Police as well, if basically inspected, that this is a huge part of their operations is moving weapons. Actually, the level of detail the Spanish police actually give out for arrests is unbelievable. So
it's completely different.
Well, I remember the same, like when they released the video of Jerry Hutch.
You never get a video released of an arrest.
Not only the video, but the amount of detail that they were forthcoming with at the time. Just their culture is to be much more upfront with what they've suspected somebody to be involved in doing, isn't it?
Yeah. So basically, what the level of arms importing, which is alleged to have gone on here, is just massive, and also the detail on it. Like, there was some of these weapons which are suspected of being trafficked, were also had mechanisms on them so they wouldn't have fingerprints. So that if you're a crime organisation using them, well, you can't tag it to a specific fingertip, all that sort of stuff as well. So huge amount of sort of high level investigation which has gone on to this. So this was basically the focus of the importing of arms thing was very much a UK thing because it was on their turf, really. But sort of high level people from Garda Síochána have been linked in the whole way through. But I have to stress, this is probably one of the most significant breakthroughs in terms of looking at the Kinahans and trying to break it down. That's the feeling in law enforcement circles that has happened since the Americans got involved, whether it was last year or the year before. Effectively, the operation has been shut down in Ireland, right, at this point in time. And now you're starting to see roots of it starting to be rolled up across the board, whether that be in Europe or elsewhere. But there's a lot of key questions to be asked as well about it took for him to go from Dubai, where he'd been living this lavish life, to Spain for people to move on him. Dubai authorities had been for a long time sort of saying, oh, we'll cooperate. We'll cooperate with everything you're doing. But they really haven't.
But if he's living there and he's been there going about his business, and it's only when he goes to Spain that he's apprehended, it does raise legitimate questions about how much on his case they are. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, there is definitely a question mark about the level of cooperation that is there, whether or not, authorities in the UAE are as cooperative or as forthcoming or care enough about OCGs operating from within their borders.
And how much of this is about starving the OCG now of resources? Because that's what all these manoeuvres are about, aren't they? It's about cutting off their access to, as you say, weapons and money and resources.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the feeling here, is that there's a feeling now, particularly you get it from speaking to Garda sources who are linked in and have been abreast and engaging with the UK authorities for the last number of weeks and months. There's a feeling now that the Kinahan organised crime group is a little bit on the run, that the net has been closing in for a long time now, and now you're starting to see sort of tangible elements of it. Obviously, you've seen Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, his conviction there over drugs issues. That was a huge one. That was a huge scalp there. He would have been high up in the UK operation. Liam Byrne, as I said, he would have been pretty much the captain effectively in the Irish sense and running it from abroad. So now you're starting to see top level people fall into the net, and there's a feeling now that you are pushing now towards potentially the end game here in this. Although that's obviously something which is, at some basis that is obviously going to be speculative. These things have a habit of dragging on, but when you see even the amount of coverage internationally that is focusing on the Kinahan organised crime group, you see now another podcast has been released, you see documentaries, across Netflix or Amazon Prime, all of these things, and there is nobody around the world who can pretend to be ignorant of how broad a scope and how wide-reaching this organised crime group has been. So there's a feeling now that all of the ducks are starting to fall into a row.